What is up, zoners? This is the Fantasy Red Zone. Call me Han because today I am writing this solo. Normally Normally Tyler Big Turd Ward is here, but he's doing family stuff, so he can't make it. Remember, family's number one. Number one. So I'm doing this show by myself today. I got a few things to go over. First off, we're going to go over some fantasy news. Then we got my cut list. Players you should cut. These players have been lingering on your team. They're lingering. They've been lingerers on your team, and they just sit there, and you're debating if you should start them this week or start them the rest of the season. I'm telling you, no. Just cut them off your team. Cut them before the championship week. I have easy cuts, and I also have hard cuts. There's some streaming options in there, too. I also have a smash and crash list for players who won you in week, 16, or who lost you in week 16. But I'm also going to talk about their potential for week 17. There's a lot to get into for... It's a lot to get into by myself, so let's get into it right now. And... first thing... oh, wait a second. Okay. First thing, let's get into the fantasy news for you. And I want to talk about... I'm just scrolling down here. Texans. They got Deontay Johnson off of waivers. I really don't care. Yeah, so Tank Dell is actually gone for the season. He tore his ACL and dislocated his kneecap. So he's gone. So they brought in Deontay Johnson. I don't think that's going to be much help. I don't care for Deontay Johnson. I'm not going to try to pick him up off waivers and play him anytime this week. But Tank Dell, damn. He broke his leg last year. And then he got shot in his leg. And then he tore his ACL. And dislocated his kneecap. That dude's going to be a pirate. That dude's going to turn into a pirate in about 3 to 4 years. Watch. What else we got? DeMarco Ryans. Texans must be laser focused after Tank Dell's dislocated knee. So, laser focus right after that. Jalen Hurts went out last game with concussion. So, keep an eye on that. He might not play in your championship week. And also, tonight, this was recorded on Monday, Packers wide receiver Christian Watson went out with a knee injury during the Saints. If he doesn't play next week, I really don't care because the Packers wide receivers are not doing anything. I even checked the score, and none of them had like any outstanding stats. The Packers are running the hell out of ball. I think they had like 3 rushing touchdowns. They don't need to pass it. They just won 34-0 against the Saints. So even with him gone, I don't think it really gives a bump to anybody else. I still think most of the wide receiver cores for the Packers have been a bust this year. Jonathan Taylor bounces back from 218-yard game. Yeah, I felt that. I went up against that. Mike McCarthy, following Cowboys win, declines to discuss coach's future after the season. That was Jerry Jones. So I was actually thinking about this while I was watching the game. I couldn't believe they beat the Buccaneers. But with what they're doing with Cooper Kupp, Mike McCarthy, there's a chance. I mean, they play against, I think they got the Eagles and the Commanders left. If somehow they may win 1 out of 2 or win both of them, Mike McCarthy might be solid and still have his job for next year for the Cowboys. I'm not sure if I like that. Next, Falcons head coach Raheem Morris on Michael Big Penix Jr.'s first start. He went out and played almost flawless football. I think he threw for like 125 yards, but that's all they needed from him. They won 34-7, so the defense played really well against that Giants offense. If you want to call that flawless, and I could be a head coach. And Lions breakout trick play, that was pretty crazy when he acted like they fell and then threw it to Sam Laporta. Anything else? Brock Bowers becomes 3rd rookie tight end to eclipse 1,000 yards, but he's the first to hit 100 catches. That is huge. Brock Bowers definitely has a future in this league, and he's going to be a top fantasy pick for years to come. They just need to get a consistent quarterback, and where their draft pick's going to be next year, they're probably going to get one. Guard off the field. I think Myles Garrett got 100 sacks in his career when he took down Joe Burrow. Jalen Hurts suffers concussion. Ben Johnson intrigued by Bears head coaching vacancy. Now, that would be pretty interesting because that is in the division. And then if that did happen, he's going to know. He was a play caller for the Lions, so he's going to know how the Lions play ball next year if he takes that job. And then you got to think, that whole offense gets a bump. I'm talking about Caleb Williams. I'm talking about DJ Moore. Rome Odunze. It's going to be his second year wide receiver, so he's going to get that bump. DeAndre Swift. That would be huge if he went to the Bears. Jared Mayo expected to return to the Patriots. I don't know why. He thinks the whole team is soft. That's all I'm going to do with that. So I think the big takeaways was Tank Dell, what happened to him. Eventually he's going to lose that leg and become a Pirate. And then Deontay Johnson got picked up by the Texans, but I don't think it's going to really be much. I don't plan on picking him up at all. Okay, next. I'm clicking all this stuff. Okay. I'm going to do it over here. Yeah. So now I'm going to get in my cuts. My cuts. These are players that linger on your roster. My plan is to be right here and to put up visuals right here of what I'm talking about. Let's see if that works. Okay, so we got the easy cuts and hard cuts. So these are players that are just sitting there on your team, and you look at him and you're like, is this going to be the team is this going to be the week that I'm going to play him? Am I starting him in? He's projected huge. Or am I still going to sit him? I don't know. Either or, I'm going to tell you these players, you just got to let go. Out of your mind, out of sight, out of mind. And the first player I want to talk about when I scroll all the way up here is CJ Stroud. Right after he had one of his better games, wasn't a great game, but one of his better games. So since week 5, he has been in the top. Since week 5, he has been in the top 15 4 times. With quarterback 11, the highest weekly finish during that span. He lost Stephon Diggs. Then he lost Nico Collins for about a month. And now Tank Dell is gone for the rest of the season. At least Nico Collins came back. He is in the top 10 in pass attempts and deep ball attempts, which is great. You want that with your quarterback. But in the clean pocket, he is 25th in completion percentage and 27th in deep ball completion percentage. So he throws the ball a lot, and he throws the ball deep a lot. But his completion percentage, when he throws them, he's inaccurate. He's an inaccurate quarterback. Inaccurate. He's an inaccurate quarterback. In a clean pocket and when he throws it deep. His offensive line is 25th in pass block win rate. He is the second most sacked quarterback on the season. And what makes it worse is that he's not even a rushing quarterback, averaging 14 yards a game. Stroud is versus the Ravens next week. It's an amazing matchup for quarterbacks. And they are home. But the Ravens' offensive line have the second most sacks this season with 47. So I'm cutting Stroud. He hasn't been producing. He just lost one of his big players. He's going up against another hard defensive line. He's already getting sacked a lot. He's going to get sacked even more on Christmas. Just cut him. Just take him off your team altogether. Hold on. A little drink. I don't think I've talked this much in my entire life. Yes, I have, just not on camera. Okay. Next up, Russell Wilson. Cut him. Take out the 2 20-point games on the season, and he's averaging around 14 fantasy points per game. He has 8 turnovers in 9 games played this year. Steelers are 22nd in the pass block win rate, and 17% of pressure turns into sacks. That's bottom 5 in the league. This week he plays the Chiefs at home. The Chiefs' pressure rate is 31%. That's a little under NFL average. But defensive tackle Chris Jones leads the league in pressures on the quarterback, and he will be in Russell Wilson's face all night long. Chiefs are also ranked 16th in quarterback scoring. So Wilson's clean pocket and pressure completion percentage is outside the top 20. So in a clean pocket, he's outside top 20. He was getting pressured. He's outside top 20 in completions. But his deep ball completion percentage is second overall. He's been known for that for his entire career. He has those moon balls. Who's that benefit? Well, this is technically a George Pickens stat. So here's the thing. If George Pickens plays, Wilson is a low-end streamer. If Pickens is out again, I cut Wilson. Wilson's gone. Off your team. Next up, Geno Smith. He is 4th in pass attempts, 3rd in pass yards, but 22nd in touchdown passes with 17. And he has 15 interceptions. So that's the main issue. He doesn't throw enough touchdowns and turns the ball over way too much. With this bad touchdown to interception ratio, he is 16th in points per game. The 5 previous weeks, he has not been higher than quarterback 19 with a floor of 5 points. So you got a quarterback that you're thinking about starting who could get you a low of 5 points. He did ball out versus the Vikings, though, but they allowed the 4th most passing yards and 22 touchdowns. They're a pass funnel defense. But next week, Seahawks will be in Chicago, who are ranked 31st in quarterback scoring, and they also have one of the better secondaries. So I'm not going to trip about Geno Smith. I'm just going to straight up cut him. I'm cutting Geno Smith. Next up. It's my pump up. Wolf of Wall Street. Check it out. All right, I'm just cutting every running back on the Denver Broncos. All right. The most frustrating backfield in fantasy football. Versus the Chargers, a Dodrick estimate, 9 rushes for 48 yards and 1 touchdown. Week 15 versus the Colts, Jaleel McLaughlin, 7 rushes, 21 yards, 0 touchdowns. Week 14 versus the Browns, McLaughlin again, 14 rushes, 84 yards, and 0 touchdowns. Week 13 versus the Raiders, McLaughlin again. So we're seeing a pattern here. It looks like it's going to be McLaughlin. He leads the running backs with 7 rushes for 44 yards, 0 touchdowns, though. So you're like, McLaughlin is the guy. He's the one that's going to be taking over the running back. No more SMA? No. What happened? Even the week before that, Javonte Williams, 9 rushes, 59 yards, 1 touchdown. So all these names for that week, they led the Broncos in rushing for that week, and it switched. There was a period where it was Jaleel McLaughlin, but now it's like, how do you really predict this team, right? It could be any running back, any week, and most of the time they don't even produce flex numbers. So even for that running back who's leading the rushing share for that week, it's not like he's winning you ball games, right? He's still putting up barely flex numbers, and that's very frustrating. Each running back has 1 game since week 8 where they have over 50% rushing share, but average 20 to 30% rest of the weeks. So they've all had that 1 game. McLaughlin has had multiple, but at least that 1 game where they have over 50%, but when they're not at 50%, they're between 20 and 30. The Broncos are a pass-first team, only running 44% of the time. That doesn't help, too. So you're not getting the carries, and then your team's not running the ball that much, so you're losing opportunities. Any running back that you decide to play is a play and pray. So I just cut all running backs from the Denver Broncos. Not even worth it. That one's going to be a hard one. Okay, let's do this one. Wide receiver Nick Westbrook. Oh, man, I just had his name down. Ikhine. Man, I was practicing it for like 30 minutes. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Oh, I can't find it anymore, and I forgot. I think it's Ikhine. I fucking hope so. Okay, so it looks like the magic has run out, but for weeks 8 through 13, he was wide receiver 13. He was producing way over expectations, like beyond way over expectations. Week 11 through 13, he was averaging just 2 receptions and 18 fucking points. That's insane. That's bizarre. That's too much. You know, you can't keep that going. How's anyone supposed to keep that up for an entire year? Since week 14, he has been outside wide receiver 50, and those were great matchups too, versus the Jags, the Bengals, and the Colts. Versus the Colts, he did score a touchdown, but still managed under 10 PPR points. It's hard to trust someone who is 84th in targets and running 20 routes a game. Next week, they have a great matchup versus the Jags. If Levis is the starter, and if you're looking for upside from a flex, then maybe he could be a streamer for you. Maybe. But I don't trust him, and I cut him anyway. All right, next up. Wavier Leggette. So he didn't play in week 16, but hasn't felt like he's been playing at all since like week 9. He's only had 1 great game this season with the Bengals, and that was versus the Bengals in week 4, scoring 19 points. After that, 2 weeks with 13 points, so not much going on. He gets the targets, but his catch rate is 58%. And since Adam Thielen's return, Leggette has been outside the wide receiver 40. His target share has been close to 16% since week 10. That's not good. Next week versus the Buccaneers, who ranked 7th in wide receiver scoring, but for someone dropping the depth chart, and he was injured last week. I cut him from my team. Cut him from yours. Oh, no, we got a couple more. Okay. Another easy cut, Kyle Pitts. He's still rostered over 65% in leagues. I don't know why. Managers are holding on to week 5 through week 8 Kyle Pitts when he was tied in 3. Since he has 5 games with 2 points or lower, with no games over 10 points. So he's not even giving you that high ceiling. He's giving you a low floor, or he's giving you a floor and even a lower floor. He's giving you a fucking basement. But people still have him on the roster at 65%. He is constantly losing managers' weeks. Next week is appealing because it's versus the Commanders, who will score a lot of points. So rookie Michael Big Penix Jr. will need to throw the ball out to catch up, basically. And tight ends are rookie quarterback's best friends. But I'm still cutting Pitts. I can't trust him no more. It's like, even if he goes and have this big game, it's like, dude, how is anyone really supposed to project this guy from doing well when he hasn't even been scoring anything over 10 points? And he's gotten 2 points and 0 points multiple times this year. Cut him. Let him go. Who else do I got? Oh, no. I still got 2 more. Okay, next up. Disappointment here. Amari Cooper. Cooper's first game with the Bills was week 7. Since then, he is wide receiver 75. Everyone thought this trade was going to break leagues, me included, but it's not the case. He is 48th in route run and 55th in route participation. Not what you want out of this trade. He is 37th in target rate. He averages close to 2 to 3 targets a game. I think he had one big game where he had more targets, but in general, the average like 2 to 3 targets a game. Next week, he faces the Jets, who give up a lot of yards to wide receivers, but cut this dude from your mind. I don't want to stress about him anymore. He does kind of have a matchup where he can maybe do something, but I'm not going to let him linger on the bench anymore. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm just cutting him. He's been wide receiver 75 since week 7, so it's not even worth it. And then let's go after another tight end. I think this is my last easy one. Cade Otton. This guy was the man when Chris Godwin and Mike Evans went out. Week 7, 22% target share. Week 8, 24%. Then 33%. And then 26%. But then Mike Evans came back in week 12. So then it turned to 10%, 21%, which is good. 21% is good, especially for a tight end. But he was tight end 29 that week. Then 15%, and then 12%, and then he was out with a knee injury for week 16. Next week they play Carolina, who ranks 4th in tight end scoring. It's a good matchup, but with the loss of targets, Bucky Irving, Rachaad White, Mike Evans, and the emergence of Jalen McMillans, plus the knee injury, I'm cutting him out. All right, that was the easy ones. Let's go into the hard cuts. Let's go against the grind here a little bit, okay? We're going to start with DK Metcalf. Some of these might be harder cuts just because their name value has more than their playing value, but it is what it is. So we're starting with DK Metcalf. Before week 16, Metcalf was 33rd in points per game in full PPR. He hasn't scored 15 points since week 7. Since then, he missed 2 games with injury. Then wide receiver 36, 34, or 36, 38, 44, 43, and 66 in weekly finishes. Second year in a row, he and Geno struggle to connect. His catchable target rate is 37th overall, and after 2 years of being in top 10 in red zone targets, he is currently 46 with 8 red zone targets this season. He only has 4 touchdowns. Geno isn't helping in that department at all because Geno isn't throwing touchdowns. We're already saying to cut him because he's not throwing touchdowns. JSN has surpassed him in the target share 24% to 22%. He had a great matchup versus the Vikings, who allow 41 points to wide receivers. That's number one in the league. Metcalf did score a touchdown, so it looked like he was going to have a big game, but he still ended with 14 points. That didn't win any manager's week last week. Next week, he plays the Bears, who are ranked 30th in wide receivers and will likely be covered by Jalen Johnson, who allows 0.17 fantasy points per route run, and that is tied for 6th best for cornerbacks. I'm cutting his ass. I'm cutting Metcalf. All right, next up. Okay. This is a big one. All right. Patrick Mahomes. I know. It's hard to actually spit that name out on the cut list, but 2024, it is what it is. So, Patrick Mahomes, 11th in points per game at 17. Only 4 top weekly finishes inside top 12 this year. And only 20% of his games this year helped you win a week. He is averaging 16 points per game the other 80%. He was saved this week with a rushing touchdown. It was only his 2nd rushing touchdown of the year. On Christmas, he travels to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers, who are ranked 29th in quarterback scoring. Then he's at Denver, who is ranked 27th. The Steelers allow 16 passing yards, and Denver allows 16 passing touchdowns on the season, and Denver has allowed 17. Now, Mahomes' floor is one of the highest for quarterbacks and has the ability to get you an extra 10 points in the last 5 minutes of the game if he's making some sort of comeback. But it will be difficult to get upside at Pittsburgh and at Denver. So what I'm saying is, if you have better options on your team, like a Bo Nix, a Jared Goff maybe. I'm thinking about players that you could have drafted or pick up on waivers after Patrick Mahomes. Shit, even Anthony Richardson, who's been averaging 20 points per game since week 11, and Anthony Richardson plays the Giants and then the Jags. You can't cut Patrick Mahomes. I'm not really saying cutting him, but if you can find somebody as a better option, like maybe the players I just named, I'd rather play them than Patrick Mahomes for the rest of the season, the last 2 games, especially in your championship. Okay, let's go after running back. Hard cut. Najee Harris. Since week 10, after their bye week, 1 game over 15 points. The last 3 weeks, he's lost managers' weeks with weekly finishes of 22, 57, and 40. His snap share and rushing share have dropped under 50 in week 11 and now is under 40% after week 16. This week, he plays the Chiefs, who are ranked dead last in running back scoring, allowing 14 points to running backs and giving up the fewest rushing yards on the season. I'm cutting Najee Harris and debating maybe a good stream option could be Jaylen Warren, just for this matchup against the Chiefs. Because Najee Harris ain't doing shit. And last up, this one's kind of sad too. I'm cutting Jerry Jeudy. I got the black lung pop. Kills me even to say this. I'm cutting Jerry Jeudy. First game without Jameis Winston, he got 2 receptions, 20 yards, 0 touchdown on 3 targets. His quarterback matchup was Josh Newton for the Bengals, who gives up a .33 fantasy points per route run. That's a good matchup. But he only had a 10% target share. Everything went to David Njoku. A DTR only threw for 157 yards, so that's something you're probably going to be working with for the rest of the year. Next week, they play the Dolphins. Jeudy will likely be shadowed by Jalen Ramsey, who allows 0.18 fantasy points per route run, a real bad matchup. So I'm just cutting Jeudy in general. I'm not going to stress about him anymore and just let him go. Let him go to the fishes. Okay. So that was the... Oh my God, was I like leaning over the entire time? I hope not. I'm going to see how this works. I should have moved my microphone because I like to lean into the microphone. All right, let me get back in the center. Yeah. 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 Let me get a water. How much time? 24 minutes? Okay. Cash money. Where am I at? Okay, so now we're going to go over the smashes and crashes. These are the players that won you the week or lost you the week. And we're going to start off with, I'm going to start off with the smashes and then end with the crashes. Okay? So smashes, we're going to talk about quarterback Jared Goff. He scored 26 points versus the Bears, who allowed 14 points to quarterbacks. It was an amazing game for him again. He has scored 13 touchdowns in 4 games. Next, he's at San Francisco. Potential to get another top 10 finish with Jared Goff because he's lighting fools up right now. Doesn't look like he could be stopped behind that offensive line. Another quarterback who smashed, who won you this week, was Jaden Daniels. He scored 34 points versus the Eagles, who allowed 15 points to quarterbacks. The last 4 games, all over 20 point. They were all 20-point games, with 2 games over 30. Unbelievable. Rushing over 50 yards in 3 out of the 4 games. Next game versus the Falcons, who allow the 7th most points to quarterbacks. Potential top 5 quarterback again for championship week. My only concern is they will get a large lead over the Falcons, and they're not going to need him. This last game was kind of worked out. You know, they were playing against a division rival, the Eagles. They were down. He had to bring them back. He ended up scoring a lot of points. I don't think that's going to be the case for the Falcons. So I think he could still perform well, especially with the rushing. But there is a chance that they might get to a huge lead and they won't need him. Might run the ball a lot more. Okay, next, running backs. Running back, Devon Achane, he scored 33 points. We finally got a game over 100 rushing yards and added 6 receptions. 0.55 rushing yards over expected per attempt. We've been waiting for this 50-yard touchdowns, and it finally happened. It felt good. He leads the league in receptions for running backs, so that's great. At Cleveland next week, who are ranked 27th in running back scoring, but his receptions keep him a top 10 running back each week. So his rushing has not been great this year. It's finally got a 100-yard rushing game, but I had him on my team. I watched a lot of Dolphins games, and he couldn't break any big plays. He finally did, but you were always relying on his receptions and his touchdowns. And most of the year, he was getting it. So, great pickup this year. Should be a top 10 pick or weekly finish for next week as well. But the number 1 dude in running backs, Jonathan Stewart for the Carolina Panthers. He's back, baby, out of retirement. Jonathan Taylor, he scored 41 points versus the Titans, who are ranked 11th in running back scoring. 218 yards. I think he had a touchdown of 65 yards and a 70 yards. I think he had 3 touchdowns in total. He had the fastest ball carrier speed in week 16 on the 70-yard run. He got up to 21.54 miles per hour, and he had the highest rushing yards over expected per attempt for the weekend at 3.52. Those are great numbers. So that means whatever the defense was giving him, he was earning another 3 yards after that. 3 straight games with 20-plus carries. The Colts are 3rd in yards before contact and play the Giants next week, who give up the 5th most fantasy points. We're looking at another top 5 potential week for, what's his name? Jonathan Taylor. Sorry, just got a text. All right. Next up, let's go to the wide receivers who smash. Wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. Again, I think he's been on this for 2, maybe 3 straight weeks. 3 straight weeks. He scored 30 points. 60% of the team targeted air yards. Holy shit. That's a lot. Versus the Raiders. He has 49 targets in the last 4 games and back-to-back games over 30 points. He plays the Titans. 30th ranked secondary versus wide receiver scoring. He will get the targets again. Potential top 12 wide receiver next week. He played against them a couple weeks prior. He got 16 points. He didn't score a touchdown, but, double-digit targets, that's what you're chasing. So there's a chance he could get at least 16 points again and hopefully a touchdown. But the main dog for week 16, wide receiver Justin Jefferson. This is why you drafted him, right? This is why you drafted this guy in the first round. Justin Jefferson scored 37 points, 54% of the targeted air yards. Sam Darnold had a clean pocket most of the game. It allowed Jefferson to get open and earn 10 receptions for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. Next week, a division rival versus the Packers, who are playing great defense. So this is kind of scary. He can easily be out of the top 10 next week without a touchdown. So he might become touchdown dependent. They played it earlier in the year. I don't think he scored I don't think he scored a lot of points. I think it was probably like 14 or 16 points. So he didn't lose you the week, but he didn't win you the week. So there's a chance that if he doesn't get a touchdown, he can end up outside the top 12 for wide receivers. And then for the tight ends, who smashed? Tight end David Njoku scored 14 points. Led the team in targets and yards. If DTR is going to throw to anyone, it appears it's going to be Njoku. Next week versus the Dolphins, who allow 13 points at tight ends. Njoku with a decent matchup sets him up for a potential top 12 tight end play again. There's only like 7 or 8 tight ends that are guaranteed to be in the top 10 or top 12 anyway. So if he keeps getting these targets, he's going to be one of them. And then also tight ends, Sam Laporta scored 14 points. Targeted 7 times, which is close to his average in the last 4 games. He only had 1 high-volume game this season, and it was when the Lions were playing catch-up to the Bills. Next week, he plays the 49ers, who are bottom third in tight end scoring. So if he doesn't score a touchdown, he has the potential to be out of the top 25 for tight ends. So touchdown dependent this guy is. Let's go to the crashes. These are the ones that we would like to forget, especially the first one that I'm going to talk about. Oh, yeah. Crash. Josh Allen. He scored 11 points for you. This game could have gone either way for Josh Allen, but the Bills didn't need him to score. James Cook scored some touchdowns, and that's all the Bills needed. Next week, he is home versus the Jets. And last week was the first time. Okay, and last week was the first time all season he didn't score 20 points at home. So at home, he's normally averaging over 20 points. Except last week, he scored 11. Potential quarterback 1 again in championship week against the Jets, where earlier in the season he scored 24 points on the road, and now he's home. So next crash, Joe Mixon. He only scored 8 points. You can't run versus the Chiefs. They have allowed the fewest points to running backs all season. Joe Mixon is a player that needs 15 carries a game to help you win a week. Next week, and I think he only got 8 against the Chiefs. Next week, he plays Baltimore. They are ranked 26th versus the run. Joe Mixon does have a little advantage for playing at home. And the Ravens' run defense has softened up a little bit, allowing 1.17 yards before contact, which ranks the middle of the pack. But Mixon has potential to be out of the top 15 next week just because of the matchup it is. This could be more of a shootout, I guess. I don't know. The defensive line, I think, for the Ravens, I think is going to really determine the game. And I think the Ravens are going to actually run away with it. So, Lamar Jackson, dude, that guy's somebody else. Wide receiver. Crash. Cooper Kupp. He only got 5 points, dude. It was a tough matchup for the Rams offensive line, and Kupp is starting to pass the torch to Puka Nacua. He had a 20-point game in Week 14, but 6 targets and 5 points combined from Weeks 15 and 16. He almost made the cut list, god damn it. Arizona is ranked 17th. That's what they play next week. And wide receiver scoring. It can turn into a shootout. Maybe. It maybe can. Kupp has potential to be outside the top 15. So I actually didn't play him this week because I was worried about him. I played DJ Moore over Cooper Kupp. And then last, this is another heartbreaker. Tight end Trey McBride-Zilla scored 5 points. 3 receptions on 4 targets, 20 yards. This ties his lowest output of the season and lowest targeted share on the season with 10%. And first time under 10 points since Week 3. I was looking at this. Sometimes you piss off the fantasy gods because you didn't sacrifice that lamb they told you to. And you get outcomes like this. So, potential top 5 tight end next week versus the Rams defense that is ranked 14th in tight end scoring, especially if it does go into a shootout. So, that's it. Okay, I finished it. Wow, 30 minutes. I swear when I was going over this, I'm like, this is going to be a 15-minute show. I somehow added 15 extra minutes. I think I blacked out this entire time. I hope it did okay. All right, so when this comes out, we got the day after, we got Tyler's wide receiver cornerback matchup. Make sure to check that out for your fantasy playoffs or your championship playoffs. It really helps you determine who to start or who to sit for your own fantasy leagues. And it's a really good tool to see which wide receiver is projected to do well against the cornerbacks. Then after that, I think it's after Christmas, we have our video that we'll be doing together. It's our player pause. It's our start or sit for Week 17. It's going to be an important one because it's the playoff matchup or championship week. So we're going to be telling you who to start or who to sit for your championship game. Please don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. Actually, let me know what you think about the cut list. It's kind of late in the season. I know not a lot of people are into fantasy football right now because they've been let go. They make cut. They didn't make the cut when it comes to playoffs. I am one of them. I guess I'm just battling for third place in the listener league now, I suppose. But other than that, let us in the comments. Let us know if you got any questions about anything. Let us know in the comments. All right. I will talk to you guys in the upcoming videos. Deuces.